year where Big Ten football almost didn't happen, where change happened daily, and where fans were living in constant uncertainty, comes a season of epic proportions. A season where the Indiana Hoosiers are bolstering one of the best rosters in decades. A season where expectations couldn't be higher, and the Hoosier Network coverage could not be greater. Welcome to The Rundown, a weekly pregame show that will bring together the greatest journalism that IU sports media has to offer. Each week, our team will give you the insight, the interviews, and the facts fans need to get ready for game day can be found right here on our show. So get ready. It's game day. And I don't know if you can get ready for that any better. How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Rundown. We took a week off for the holiday, but we are back. And, man, are we back in a big way. Wisconsin, Indiana, a top 20 matchup going down today in Madison, Wisconsin. And we got a loaded show for you, getting you ready for it. Beside me, my co-host, Griffin Epstein. Griff? Man, you know, we've been talking all week about it. It's finally here. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you, too. One thing I got to say, just thank goodness we finally have this 3:30 game. My sleep schedule was not enjoying these noon games, the rundown starting at 10:30 in the morning. That's a little bit early for college students, and I know a little bit early for all you back home, especially my friends on the West Coast trying to watch some Indiana football. So like this 3:30 start, ABC, top 20 matchup. There's a little bit of excitement around Bloomington. I think it's the second most talented team IU's going to face all season. It's going to be a blast, and we got a great show coming up, too, to preview it all.
Not to mention, we're going to talk a lot of Wisconsin and IU football today, but when I look at these two teams, Griff, it sure seems to me that this is going to be the big kind of measuring stick for these teams the rest of the way. Wisconsin only has 3 games under their belt because of COVID. So they actually need this game to be able to tell the nation whether or not they're top 15 or not. As for IU, if you can beat Wisconsin, most likely you can beat Purdue next week and possibly whoever you're going to have to face off the week after, in which case you're seeing could IU be a New Year's Six bowl team? Yeah.
I mean, New Year's Six bowl game for Indiana football. Obviously, they've only played in the Rose Bowl once. That's the only time they've ever played in really a bowl that prestigious. The Fiesta Bowl would be most likely, but I mean that would just be incredible for this Indiana fan base, for this Indiana program to either get a New Year's Day game or the day after, or the day before New Year's against another top 20 team, whether that's the Pac-12 champion or a high-level SEC team. It would be something special, be a great reward. But I agree with you. I think a win today, they set themselves up for that. If they lose today, they're not going to be able to make a New Year's Six. But if they win, they're top 10. They're not 100% out of the college football playoff. It would still take close to a miracle. But, you know, a win today, I think, is their best win of the season.
I think you might need everyone in the SEC and the ACC and the Big Ten to lose for IU to make the college football playoff at this point. Anyway, Griff, we got a loaded show today. We got a lot of fun guests coming on. I know Wert's kicking it off with Ankeny here in a few minutes, who is actually in Madison. And then a little bit later, we're talking to Matt Reynoldson, the CBS affiliate out of Green Bay, just kind of about this Wisconsin team a little deeper. But we got more than that.
Jay-Sean Harris, many IU fans remember him, one of the more electric players to ever put on the Indiana uniform. He had 3 punt returns for touchdowns in his career, also a great speedy wide receiver. But the interesting story about him, and that connects to this current IU football team, he tore his ACL 3 years in a row, still came back and had a very successful senior season, actually played in the XFL over the spring. So even after 3 ACL tears, is able to continue his football career. Of course, Michael Penix, the big storyline for IU football last week, tearing his ACL for the second time, also the 3rd straight season for IU's star quarterback. His season ends early, so it's going to be really interesting to get Jay-Sean Harris's perspective. How do you bounce back? What's that process like of rehabbing from an ACL tear? And really, the biggest question for me is just, how do you have confidence on your legs and in your health to keep on going out and playing when you're getting hurt year in and year out? We saw Jay-Sean Harris do it. He graduated in 2018 from IU after a very successful career. Obviously, today the question is Tuttle, but in the long term, Indiana needs a healthy Mike Penix. So really interested to hear Jay Sean's thoughts.
Yeah, it should be fun to hear from him. Additionally, for those of you who are IU basketball fans, don't worry, we got you covered. You're not on the IU football bandwagon yet. We don't get it, but by God, we got some basketball discussion both on the men's and women's side. Additionally, Home Field Apparel will be joining the show around 2:30 to talk to us about how they're breaking the internet and how they get so unique. My goodness, we're going to have a lot of fun with that interview as well. But for right now, we're actually going to bring in our man on the ground in Madison, Wisconsin, Jack Ankeny, now joining us here on the show. Jack, man, how you doing? Is it cold up there in Madison?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. I mean, it's a little bit chilly. It's in the low 30s. You know, we got some. There's a couple smaller lakes around campus, so I think you kind of get that lake effect. You know, a little bit cloudy, but the sun's trying to peek its head out. But yeah, it's not too bad.
And Jack, sorry, go ahead.
What's the atmosphere like in Madison? Obviously, no fans allowed. Is any people on the street watching the game? A level of excitement? I feel like we felt that in Bloomington some weeks, even though fans aren't allowed in the stadium.
Right. It's actually a little bit quieter than I expected. You know, some of the bars seem like they're starting to get going for game day, but in terms of people walking around, it's much more quiet than I thought. You know, kind of when I had a chance to walk around campus a little bit, kind of past some houses and apartments, it seems like the students that are still here are getting up for the game. You know, you can hear the music, hear them getting excited for the matchup. But I would say I am a little bit underwhelmed by the amount of excitement around Madison today.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird because all these schools are doing these half schedules where they're sending kids home for Thanksgiving. Right. So I bet it doesn't feel like really that full Madison experience that we were all looking forward to when the world was normal. We saw that we were opening the season at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Jack, I want to dive into with you to this Wisconsin team. They're interesting in the standpoint they've only played 3 games. We really don't know that much about them considering they dominated 2 teams in Illinois and Michigan, but those don't look that good anymore. And then they lost to Northwestern on the road, but Northwestern's in first place. So where would you say this Wisconsin team is at?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty typical Wisconsin team when you look at the past couple of years. You know, they only start juniors and seniors on the offensive line, so they're an experienced group in that respect. You know, Graham Mertz is the freshman quarterback, but he's got experienced weapons around him. His 2 favorite targets are senior receivers. I think their defense is going to pose the biggest challenge that IU's offense has seen this year, and especially with Jack Tuttle under center. You know, that could be a problem if he's not ready to go. But you know, the coaches talked a lot this week about how, you know, he's got great work ethic and preparation. So, you know, I think he's going to be ready to go. I expect a great matchup today.
And Jack, obviously a top 20 matchup for Wisconsin, but it's been such a strange schedule for them, as we've talked about, and we're going to continue to talk about. Just 3 games played, fewest in the Big Ten. I guess, what does this game mean for Wisconsin just because it's been a strange season? And are they rusty or maybe they fresh because they played just 2 games in 2.5 months?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't played since November 21st, so they've had a lot of time to prepare for this game, you know, whether or not they've been able to have the typical amount of practices they'd want. But, you know, it's a game to prove that they belong in the top 16. I think on paper, and when you think of just kind of the pedigree of the program, you can slot them in there. But, you know, they destroyed Illinois the first week, they destroyed Michigan, and then they lost to Northwestern, who then went on to lose to Michigan State. So we really don't know quite how good at their ceiling this Wisconsin team is, and I think today will really tell a lot about both sides.
Jack, when you look at this just overall Wisconsin team, we see Graham Mertz in the offense. He was dynamic to start the season. They have a solid running back. They always do. But this Wisconsin defense is statistically the best in the Big Ten. Do you think that's a fair assessment of how good they are, or do you think it's kind of reaching because they haven't played that many games?
Well, I think, I mean, it could be proved wrong today if Indiana's offense plays well, but I think even though they've played 3 games, I think you could still call them the best defense in the Big Ten, if not the second best. You know, they held Northwestern even in that loss to a pretty low amount of points, Illinois and Michigan as well. So I mean, they're led by Jack Sanborn. He's their big middle linebacker, kind of that traditional Wisconsin hard hitter that you see on a year-to-year basis. So, he's leading this Wisconsin defense, and I think this is the best defense IU will face this season, barring whatever matchup they see in a bowl game, or I think even in Champions Week, this Wisconsin defense would be better than maybe Iowa. I think Northwestern is the team that you could say maybe they have a better defense than Wisconsin.
And obviously the big storyline for IU going into this week, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Michael Penix, season-ending injury, Jack Tuttle now coming in for Indiana, and you go in probably facing the toughest defense, as you said, Indiana's going to face all year. His first collegiate start. He's only thrown 15 D1 passes since he graduated from high school. What kind of pressure's on him today? And I know you've done a lot of research, talks to some players and coaches about it. Is he going to be able to deal with this moment? National TV, one of the biggest games of this college football Saturday.
Yeah, I think it obviously helps him that there's not going to be fans today. Wisconsin's got one of the greatest college football atmospheres in the country, so I think that helps him. He's not going to have, thousands of fans screaming in his ear the whole game. I think without Penix, IU's offense is quite a bit less explosive. But I don't think the pressure is only on Tuttle to perform today. Wap and Ty Freifogel both had their worst games of the season last week against Maryland. So I think a lot of pressure is on them to have big games and help out their inexperienced quarterback. The run game we saw got going this week. I don't really see it having as much success this week against Wisconsin. I think Tuttle's got to have the mindset of, Tom Allen said before this week, it's the greatest team sport and we need every area of our team to improve by 1%. So there is pressure on Tuttle. I wouldn't say it's an immense amount of pressure just because he has so much talent around him that, we really saw kind of be out of sync last week against Maryland. So we definitely need a better performance out of Wap and Ty today.
Wap and Ty going to be huge for the Hoosiers today, and that passing game could be huge. And Jack, we talk about the run game all week this week, and Wisconsin's only allowing 67 rushing yards a game. If you're Stevie Scott and you're coming into this one knowing that Wisconsin has one of the best rush defenses in the Big Ten, if not the best, what's the mindset in that running back room, and how can IU change their running game plan this week to kind of expand on an area of their game that they have not been able to expand on this year?
Right. Well, we saw last week IU start to get a little bit more creative with the run. The first couple of games of the season, it seemed like they were just trying to pound Stevie Scott up the middle. Last week against Maryland, I know they had probably the worst run defense in the Big Ten, but we saw IU get a little bit more creative with some outside runs. We also saw that direct snap in the Wildcat formation. Even though Samson James was inactive last week, we saw a breakout performance from Tim Baldwin. So, I think Indiana's got to stay unpredictable in the run game. They're not just going to be able to get consistent push and just run over this Wisconsin defense. That's not going to be the way that this running game has success. Stevie Scott's been good in the red zone. He hasn't had too much success breaking out big runs outside of that. So I think it's a really tough matchup for the run game.
Well, it's going to be a fun game, Jack. And before we let you go, we got to get a prediction from you. You'll be there. You'll watch it. Who do you think is going to come on top when the final whistle is called this evening in Madison?
Yeah, so I thought Indiana got pretty disrespected by Vegas being 14-point underdogs today. I think they keep it close. Wisconsin doesn't have an extremely explosive offense, and Indiana's defense has been great this year. So I think it's a close one. Unfortunately, I'm going to go Wisconsin 20, Indiana 17. I think we see a great one today.
All right.
Sounds good to me, Jack. Appreciate you coming on. And have fun up there. First game for you since when was the last time you attended this sporting event?
Yeah, I was trying to think of this. I'm pretty sure it's the Big Ten women's basketball tournament back in March, right before COVID canceled everything. So it's been a while. I'm really excited to get in the stadium.
It's definitely been a while. Well, Jack, enjoy it. And we look forward to reading all your stuff post-game. You can follow all of Jack's work online at thehoosiernetwork.com. So Jack Akeney joining us there, and I'm a little jealous, Griff. I'm going to be honest. Can't believe I'm saying that. I'm a little jealous that somebody else gets to be in Madison, Wisconsin today.
Yeah, I mean, originally this game was the first game on the schedule. I remember seeing in April, oh, maybe things will be back to normal. We'll get a full stadium in Madison. We'll be able to go. Beautiful August Friday night season opener. Maybe both teams will be ranked. Obviously, none of that happened, but it is a beautiful town, I'm told, and hopefully Jack enjoys it. Certainly follow him on Twitter as well. I know he'll have injury updates and all that. Wisconsin's got a couple players questionable today, and Jack will be at the forefront of all that.
All the forefront from Jack Anthony in Madison at the HoosierNetwork.com. Griff, I want to move on and talk about Maryland, but I need a little refresher. Let's go ahead and check out this quick little video made by Kurt Spittler at the Hoosier Network to give us the refresher on that Maryland game. Emphasis on the word quick there. Not very much to see, but frankly, the game didn't have a lot of highlights for us to use. The first half was, let's be honest, incredibly boring. But then the second half gives us a little bit more to work with. And Griff, it was an ugly win, but a win nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I was inside the stadium in the press box watching that one, and that first half was one of the ugliest first half of college football I've watched in person in a long, long time. Not a pretty sight, but good teams find ways to win. It's never easy to win in the Big Ten. IU battled. They stayed in it throughout the whole game. And even though Maryland probably outplayed them in that first half, the Hoosiers were still winning. And, we're going to talk about it a couple more times today, but this Indiana defense is elite. They proved it again 4 different times in that game. Maryland got inside the Indiana 30. And the Terps only got 3 points in the first half from that. We're basically shut out in the second half besides a late, really Hail Mary touchdown in garbage time by Talua Tagovailoa. So it was really a dominant effort by the IU defense. But I think the biggest storyline in the end, of course, Michael Penix's injury, just a very devastating blow to Indiana. The good news, though, they found a way to win and set up a really big matchup now this week in Madison.
I guess when I just look back to that Maryland game, we talk about how this IU football team has progressed over time. And it keeps coming back to the same thing is you got to be able to win these games. These are the kind of games you kind of need to have, and you can't just slack off and hope for the best. You got to be able to beat Maryland at home, and you got to be able to hope you can beat Wisconsin on the road. And if IU can do that, I think we'll kind of turn the page in who this IU team is. Griff, what do you think was the biggest takeaway from that Maryland game? I know there's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously outside of the Penix injury, I think the biggest highlight was the run game. You just saw the Stevie Scott touchdown there. The Hoosiers were able to run the football, but they're by far their best showing of the season, over 200 yards for the first time on the ground. We saw Tim Baldwin come in with Stevie Scott out rush for his first 100-yard game as a freshman. He looked really spry. It looked like maybe he could be a good compliment to Stevie Scott, especially as you look in this game. We know Scott is that big runner. He's going to get the third and short. He's going to get the carries in the red zone. But IU has been unable to establish a consistent run game when they're just looking to get some yards on 1st and 10 and that basic quarterback draw. Maybe the more speedy Tim Baldwin can get some yards today. I don't expect Samson James to play. Apparently has some family issues going on, according to Tom Allen. So I think the run game was a big positive for Indiana. We saw the offensive line get the game ball because of their performance. They need to be really good again, I think, today in Madison.
Yeah, they do need to be good. And I think that offensive line has just battled health issues all year long. And I think it's shown in the run performance. And I think now that they're kind of getting a better group out there, it should be interesting to see what this run game can really look like. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about Maryland later, but last time 2 top 25 teams faced off, and one of them was Indiana, the students were feeling it for sure. And we had a chance to talk with a few of them. They might have had a few drinks in them, I don't know. But we had a chance to talk to a few of them pregame. Let's go ahead and take a look at our last Tailgate Talks. All right, here we are, last Saturday before Thanksgiving break for IU students. It's also one of the biggest games IU has ever played. Top 10, Indiana versus Ohio State. What does that mean? Well, it means that IU students are feeling it this morning. It's 8 a.m. I'm not up yet, but by God, IU students are. Let's go check in. All right, here with Jimmy Sutton, absolute Indiana sports media legend. Jimmy, how are we feeling about this one today? Ohio State's pretty good.
Dude, man, I'm excited. I really think it's gonna come down to a lot. I really think that if IU can convert on offense, and I think if we don't have the turnovers, I think it's gonna happen. I really do. I think that the 18.5, 20.5 spread, that's unlawful. I think that's offensive to IU. Like we're ranked number 9 in the country. I don't understand how you can do that.
You know what I say? Invest in our military. Take Army today. The Black Knights, baby. Let's go.
All right, what's your name?
My name is Jackson.
All right, Jackson, I have a question. It's your birthday.
It is my birthday.
How old are you?
22.
Oh, that's the big one. That's the big one.
I'm looking forward to it, yeah.
You're 22, so I got to ask, what the hell are you doing drinking Bud Light?
See, Bud Light's a great beer, all right? And I'm not going to take any Bud Light slander today, all right? It's a good beer.
All right, we got 2 Ohio State guys.
We got 3 over here, 4.
Why? Why do you have to ruin everything? Every year, why?
I don't know. We're just good. I mean, I can't complain.
This isn't fun.
Here for a good time.
Is it fun just killing everyone every year?
It is.
I'm actually jealous. Is this what it feels like to be in football school?
Yes, yeah. I don't know. How do you?
All right, gentlemen. What's the drink of choice today?
Drink of choice today.
Post IU victory, might I add. Post IU victory, drink of choice.
We don't know because we're going to black out. Whatever drink is available, we are going to take that and we're going to just rip that till the sunlight. And that's all I got.
I mean, you know, you always get interesting characters here in Bloomington, no doubt about that. In his
That's for
defense,
sure.
I will say, in that man's defense in the red shirt, Army did cover that day. I will say they did cover, so he wasn't wrong. I mean, he was speaking some truth. As to the rest of that, I can't really agree with much of that. Now, I want to go back to that video for a second, Griff, because there was something I was asking those Ohio State fans. How did they just ruin everything? Because that's been the big topic of the past 2 weeks. If Ohio State misses another game, they are going to be ineligible for the Big Ten championship game. That's going to be something we're going to talk about a little bit later. But right now, joining us, Matt Reynoldson from CBS in Green Bay. Matt, great to see you. How you doing, man?
Great, guys. College football Saturday up here in Badgerland. So looking forward to everything. I'm a Nebraska grad myself, so my Huskers are looking pretty good up against the Boilers right now. So looking forward to that.
And Matt, I got to ask you, when I look at this Wisconsin team, we were just saying it's kind of hard to get a big read on them considering the fact they've only played 3 games. You've had a little bit of a closer look than any of us had up there in Green Bay. When you see this Wisconsin team, what kind of trends do you see? What is this team's identity?
Well, I think you're more looking for an offensive identity than a defensive identity right now, because that defensive identity has stayed consistent throughout the past decade. They're going to pound you in the front 7. They're going to have some ball hawks in the back end and just make it really tough on you to move the ball unless you can get over the top and get some of those big plays. But offensively, this team is still searching for an identity. They thought they had it in week 1 when Graham Mertz threw for 5 touchdowns in his debut as the redshirt freshman starting quarterback. But then COVID issues came about. The Badgers had to cancel 2 games at Nebraska and at home against Purdue, and really kind of the wheels fell off of this offensive beast that was churning very early on. But I think if they use the skill position players right and start to play maybe like they did against Michigan in that week 4 game, this offense can be really something special.
Something special might be what both teams need today to get a victory. Is this is kind of going to be the measuring stick game for both these teams. I want to ask you about this Wisconsin defense. Statistically, they are the best in the Big Ten. Holding rushing yards to opponents 67 yards a game. That's pretty good in the Big Ten Conference, if you ask me. When you look at this Wisconsin defense, are they that good, or are the stats a little, flattered because they played Illinois, Wisconsin, and Northwestern?
Well, I think the stats are a little inflated, but I mean, you do look at the past few years and you say, okay, this is a system that works and a system that extends on a year-to-year basis. And I think with a lot of Big Ten teams, you start and you judge defensive teams by what they bring at the inside linebacker position. I mean, Wisconsin has just been so good there, getting pass rush and getting just run stoppage from that inside linebacker position. They're aggressive, but they stay home. And when you stay home so well at that inside linebacker position, you have smart players, smart, sound linebackers making the calls for a defense. You can take a lot more chances as a defensive coordinator, and I think that's what Wisconsin has done when they're at their best.
Graham Mertz has just been absolutely phenomenal. So started off really hot, 2021 over 200, I believe 248 and 5 touchdowns. When you look at him and his kind of consistent and inconsistent play, what's the reasoning behind that? And have they offered anything inside that press conference to give kind of a little insight as to his inconsistencies?
Well, I think a lot of the inconsistency comes from Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald just really finding a way to pin their ears back and make a young quarterback uncomfortable. Northwestern's a place where the Badgers have had a lot of trouble in recent years coming out with a win, and there was no exception to that this year, especially after maybe the schedule inconsistencies that threw Wisconsin a little bit off their game, I believe, despite coming back and coming off of that 2-week quarantine earlier in the season and just dominating Michigan. When you don't have that week-to-week coming off a win, getting prepared for the next game, that rhythm kind of gets off. And I think that is the same with a young quarterback. Mertz was so impressive in his debut, as I mentioned earlier, 5 touchdowns in that. But there was a lot of hype on Mertz coming in, a top 50 player out of Kansas coming to Madison. And he really showed out in that first start. He has the arm talent. He has the tools to do something that no Wisconsin quarterback has done since Russell Wilson. But it really is all about putting it together and using the pieces around him. There is no Jonathan Taylor this year. You have to spread it around to those playmakers on the outside to get Mertz really in a rhythm.
Now, Matt, I got to ask, you are a Nebraska grad who now works in Wisconsin. You've been able to see both field experiences. When you look at both, I got to ask, which one is better? I've been to Nebraska. I've not been to Madison, but Nebraska is just out of this world. Which one's your favorite personally?
Well, they're both pretty incredible, I got to be honest. Jump around is one of the most insane things in college sports. And luckily, I've been to games covering Nebraska in Madison where the students show up before halfway through the third quarter. So it's a full student section for most of the game. And then when you get to you hear the horns blaring right at the right between the third and fourth quarter breaks and jump around, it shakes the press box. It shakes the entire stadium. There's nothing like that anywhere else in college sports. But if you're giving me a full game atmosphere, I got to be a little bit of a homer on this one and say Nebraska, 60 straight years of sellouts. Hopefully that continues when they let fans back in next year, but really kind of an unmatched atmosphere in Lincoln.
Man, all I remember is when last year when I was walking in the press box at Nebraska, we had people literally at tailgates offering us food to feed us. And I was like, how can I write negatively about this team now? I kind of have to give them a little benefit of the doubt for the free barbecue and the free, whatever. But anyway, Matt, I want to ask one more thing before I let you go. You look at Wisconsin, you look at Indiana and the Big Ten as a whole. When you look at these two teams and the way they're going to face off today, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's a lot bigger question for me just because of the injury to Michael Penix Jr. I mean, he has been so dynamic for this Hoosiers team, and it's just been so fun to watch what Tom Allen, a defensive guy, has been able to do with this offense. So it'd be a lot maybe easier to predict or maybe even lean toward an Indiana win at Camp Randall if Penix was on the sideline or in the huddle for the Hoosiers. But right now, I think I got to give the edge to Wisconsin. I mean, I really like this Indiana defense. I really like what they have in weapons on the outside, especially in a guy like Whop Phillier. But defensively, I don't know if Indiana stands up to what Northwestern brings and what Northwestern did to frustrate Wisconsin from the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin here by about a touchdown.
All right. Sounds good. Matt Reynoldson, CBS in Green Bay. Thanks for joining us, man. Enjoy your college football Saturday.
All right. Thanks. You as well.
Matt Reynoldson from CBS joining us there. And Griffey makes some good points. I mean, the whole debate about how this Indiana team can play and how good this defense is, it very well could be held up to how Wisconsin played against Northwestern and vice versa.
Well, yeah, I mean, as he said, you have 5 turnovers against Northwestern. The Wisconsin defense played pretty well against the Northwestern offense that has put up some points against some teams, but I mean, you're continuously turning the ball over. You're just not helping out your defense. You're on the field a lot, and they put up only 7 points in that game. So I don't think I think IU's defense is probably better than Northwestern's defense. I think they're going to be challenged today, but you'd also think they've had 2 weeks off to play, to look at the film. You'd have to expect you're going to see a more poised, more focused Graham Mertz. They also, Wisconsin was down multiple players. Their star tight end, multiple wide receivers in that Northwestern game. They should mostly be healthy today. I would expect a better performance from the Wisconsin offense today, but I think they are the key factor. If this IU defense can shut them down and force turnovers, it keeps this IU offense that's going to struggle most likely with Jack Tuttle in and make it a really close, tight game.
And I think the other thing is we're going to talk about this a lot more. When you look at this Wisconsin team, you see a lot of strengths, but you see inconsistencies. And the question is, are we going to see the Wisconsin team we saw against Illinois in week 1, where the offense could just not be stopped and the defense was so dominant? Or are we going to see the team we saw against Northwestern that gave up 17, but also couldn't get the offense really going? And I think that's the big question, because I look at this Indiana defense, and I do think the Indiana defense is legit. I think they are as good as everyone is hyping them up to be. My question is, can the offense match it? If the defense is going to set up the offense with, let's say, Taiwan Mullen gets an interception in the first quarter and gets the offense setting up on the Wisconsin 40, can Indiana drive the ball enough to get some points on the board? And I think it very well could be. I'll look at Indiana puts up 15 points all from field goals today. I hope not, for the sake that I like watching touchdowns, but that very well could be a possibility.
Absolutely. And I mean, you talk about scoring points off turnovers. Indiana has scored 29% of their points so far in 6 games this season off turnovers. They've done a great job capitalizing on their defense, helping them out. And I think they need to do that again today. I look at between the 10 to 17 point range that Indiana needs points off turnovers if they want to win this game, because it's very hard to put together an 80-yard drive against this Wisconsin defense. I think, as Matt said, they have the capability to be just that good.
Yeah, and I do think they are that good. I think this Wisconsin team is one that once they figure themselves out in any given season, they can beat absolutely anybody, including Ohio State. I just think they are that dangerous. And I'd be honest, if I'm Ohio State and I'm playing in the Big Ten Championship, I'd rather have Northwestern than Wisconsin, because I just think Wisconsin has that many more weapons. Would you agree with that, Griff?
I would, and I kind of go back to that point that Wisconsin was really banged up in that Northwestern game offensively, and that they were down multiple players due to both injuries and COVID-19 issues, which they've had throughout most of October. They weren't at full strength. I think they weren't expecting Northwestern to be as strong defensively as they were. I just don't see Northwestern having that many offensive weapons when they're facing a good defense. And we saw that last week. Peyton Ramsey and that offense looked putrid against Michigan State, which has an okay defense, but that's just not that good of a football team. Very young. So I agree. I mean, I think Wisconsin is the overall stronger team than Northwestern. I know Northwestern won the game, but that's why you love college football. Upsets happen. There was injuries involved. I think there was a mental side of things involved. I think the concern for Wisconsin here is kind of the mental side of things. You've only played 3 games. It's been herky-jerky. Are you rested? Are you rusty? What's their even motivation now that they've lost a game and are out of the running for the Big Ten championship? They're a team that every year they're playing to go to the Big Ten championship. They're playing to win a Rose Bowl. They went to the Rose Bowl and lost by 1 point to Oregon last year. That's kind of out the window at this point. At this point, they're playing to go play in the Outback Bowl in Tampa, and they might finish with 5 games in their season. So I think one thing I'll be watching, especially in the first quarter, is just what's the motivation of this Wisconsin team. We know this Indiana team is going to be fired up, ready to go. They know the importance of this game for this team. And Tom Allen, I mean, he gets me fired up just watching him on a Monday morning press conference. So I can't imagine what he's going to be like in the next hour in the locker room. But I think for Wisconsin, I'll be interested to see what their motivation level is, what their energy level is. Of course, there's no fans. That's been a factor all season. I think IU started slow at times because of no fans. I think I'm interested to see what Wisconsin does today, especially in the first quarter.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge start to the game. But, Griff, I'm excited for the game, but I think I just might be more excited to finally talk to our next guest. I feel like we've been trying to get him to come on the Hoosier Network for a while. I think it's finally time we bring him on. Let's go ahead and do it. Connor Hitchcock joining us now, the man behind Home Field Apparel. Connor, how you feeling today?
Guys, I'm feeling great. I am I forgot I was going to be on camera this morning. Forgot to shave my mustache. So, yeah, you're welcome for that. But additionally, I am here in our warehouse where we are trying to get out many holiday orders. So we're trying to keep the noise down here, but we'll definitely be turning the IU game on at 3:30, and who knows what that means for your orders if I'm watching Indiana football and helping fulfill. So, yeah, I'm excited for today, though.
And Connor, I know you guys are now, a national brand. The Athletic wrote an article about you guys and how you're making apparel for, collegiate teams across the country. What's kind of the story of the business? How did it start and how did it grow now to being I know also a force just on Twitter. I see your guys' tweets and I'm always laughing at them all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how the tweets happen. But the predecessor for Home Field started when I was a student at IU. I was studying marketing, and at the time I just printed out or designed a few State of Indiana stickers. I don't even really know why, just felt like it. Got them printed, and a few stores around Bloomington started picking them up. And so those stores started picking them up. I make a website for it. Stores in Indy see it, start picking it up. This is all, again, while I'm a student. And then the State Museum, actually, of Indiana asked us for T-shirts. And we only had sticker designs, and it's just something I was doing on the side as a student. And so I mocked up a few shirt ideas. I'm not a designer or anything, but I have a decent idea of what looks good. And so mocked those up, had them printed somewhere. They liked them, and then eventually taught myself in my college apartment right across from Classic Lanes off of 17th there by Smoking Jacks, how to screen print. And so I was just doing that again in college. Left college, started working in marketing in Indy, and the Pinstripe Bowl happened. Which, if you're watching this show, I assume you all know the kick was good. And we made a shirt, just kind of tongue-in-cheek about it. Didn't require licensing or anything, saying the kick was good, and sold a bunch of just items out the door. And so again, this is a little side project I have when I was a student. Now I'm working full time, and it led me to think, what if I got licensed? I keep saying we, but it was really just me at the time, for different schools. And so I went down that road and got licensed for IU, Purdue, Indiana State, Ball State. Did quite well with them, to the point where I started to consider I could spin off my own collegiate apparel brand. And do this really well. And so ultimately it's what myself and my wife, Krista, who's our creative director and my co-founder, what we decided to do. And I left my job in July of 2018. We launched Home Field in August of 2018 with only 8 schools. And it's been growing like crazy since. There's been a lot of up and downs. In the Athletic article you mentioned, it talks about how last year in July, I wasn't receiving a paycheck. Krista wasn't receiving a paycheck, and there were $800 left in the Home Field bank account because it turns out it's very difficult to create a brand. And so, we hit an inflection point there in July of 2019, where honestly it follows the trajectory of Indiana football really closely, which is very funny. That's traditionally not something you want to tie your hopes to, but I love it with my whole heart. We were behind the 9 Windiana everything with I was there that night with Kyle and Chris when 9 Windiana was coined, and drank many beers to create it. And so, our brand, we made the shirts and just kind of went with it. So yeah, that's the real turnaround point to bring it full circle. It started with and has been escalated significantly because of Indiana football.
Man, I love that story. It just
Awesome.
We love seeing you guys grow. I feel like every time I go to your website, I've had to stay away because I'm on a college budget still, and you guys are just taking way too much out of it. But I have to ask, licensing is very difficult for those of you who don't know. It's very hard to get some of these colleges to lock on. Some of them are more exclusive than others when it comes to who's going to be printing their logo on their product. Which school did you guys get and just sit back and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun?
So there's so many different ones that are going to be like really fun. I think the oh crap, like we're legit moment was when we got licensed for Michigan. Michigan is an extremely difficult license, and they take things quite seriously in Ann Arbor, especially their brand. And so that's, I think, when we realized like, oh, this is happening. I mean, we had already had a lot of success, a lot of fun, different ones. Bama was also a big one as you're scrolling there, but yeah, we started this whole Big News Saturday thing in July of launching a school a week. And we started with some great, really fun schools like Tulane and Hawaii. And our last 2 weeks were Alabama and Michigan in a 4-month span. So our brand gained a lot of national recognition in that time, certainly, to where a Tulane where an Alabama or a Michigan could see like, wow, they did really well with these great schools. But I mean, Tulane and Hawaii aren't the same size brand as Michigan and Alabama, right? So yeah, it's been a blast for sure.
My favorite home field product might be the Bison. I've seen a lot of people around Bloomington wearing that. There it is.
Oh, show it off. Come on, give us the full.
Yeah,
give us the folded one.
there.
We got to see the full.
Yeah,
oh, it's beautiful.
I'm actually wearing an IU shirt I got at Goodwill back in college, but not something we print.
I was just curious what the inspiration is. I feel like we've seen more momentum to bring back the Bison mascot as a mascot for Indiana, and it feels like your guys' apparel and those shirts and sweatshirts that are very popular have been a part of it. What was your guys' inspiration on that product?
Yeah. So, I mean, Chris, our creative director, could speak even better to that. But what we do is we like to not just tell, like, I mean, we print the script Indiana on things, and it's great, and people love it. It's a script Indiana. We all recognize it. For us, it's in addition to those iconic marks, going and finding the lesser told stories. So like last year, for example, we did something called the IU Football Shirt of the Week, where we would dig really deep into history of IU football, IU artifacts. Follow him on Twitter. Chris ended up helping me a lot with that. But for example, we have a light blue shirt with the record from the year that the Dickens boys wore light blue. Right now, everybody knows because Kane Womack's wearing that light blue shirt every week. But yeah, we just love to tell those different stories. Of there it is, exactly, yeah, through our apparel, and the Bison was one of them. I mean, that 6 or 8 year stretch, I always forget how many years, where we had a student in a Bison suit roaming the mascot. It's pretty sweet. And there's like random, if you look on campus, there's a few random, like, I think there might even be like in stone somewhere, like a Bison, like this guy. I forget the exact story behind this Bison logo. But yeah, there's plenty in IU's history. I mean, we've tried a lot of mascots. We tried a bulldog for 2 seconds. We tried Mr. Hoosier Pride, who got nixed after 1 year in '79, I think. He looked a lot like, whatever Nebraska's guy's named. I'm blanking. But yeah, we just try to tell different, more unique stories with it. And the Bison's one of them, and we love it. I mean, I think there's a lot of push to bring the Bison back, obviously. I don't know if they ever will, but I would be fully on board with it.
I fully support the Bison coming back.
Yeah.
As somebody who's going to be watching the game at Nick's here in a few hours, I fully support bringing the Bison 100% back.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, do you have any cool shirts you could show us? Anything to show our viewers? What kind of you guys got?
Yeah, I brought on the IU stuff. Those couple of ones we have there. There's plenty behind us, but a lot of them are honestly being grabbed right now to be fulfilled. I don't know if you can see. We have
my goodness,
weekend people going right now. Not as busy as during the week. But yeah, there's 100+ schools right now on the site, growing and growing. We're planning for Big New Saturday season 2 right now. We may or may not have an IU football shirt coming out sometime soon. We'll see about that. But yeah, it's we have been here and we will be here fulfilling all your Hoosier shirts that you need for the next however long.
Before we let you go, Connor, it's a big game today, one of the biggest of the Indiana football season. Know you're, of course, a big fan. What's your prediction for today's game?
Oh, Hoosiers for sure. I was very disrespected. I felt disrespected for the team when I saw the line come out. I understand that Penix is out, but I've convinced myself that either Wisconsin does not nearly have enough tape that they need and they couldn't figure him out. But honestly, I just think our defense is really good. And so I think we're on par, with the Northwesterns and Wisconsin's in terms of defense in the conference. And I know Wisconsin is decent this year in terms of quarterback play. Again, they've only played 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. So I got to take IU. I believe in the Magic this year. I believe in Tom Allen. I would do anything for Tom Allen. He could convince me probably to do anything. And so I like even that Coach K clip that's been circulating on IU Twitter the last 2 days of him interviewing him, and like the stories of Tom making everybody believe like, yep, I'm in until we are proven otherwise, which I still don't count the Ohio State game as being proven otherwise. I am on board with this team. So probably be a slugfest.
Well, Connor, I appreciate you coming on, man. Just for anyone who's watching, if they loved your shirts, they love what you see, where can they get some just in time for the holiday season?
Yes, homefieldapparel.com. We go there, shop whatever collection you'd like to, but we are guaranteed like drop dead. This is the last day you can order to guarantee it. There's a chance still, but to guarantee delivery in time for Christmas is December 12th. We are working 6 a.m. to midnight here ever since Thanksgiving, just different shifts getting these out. But so it may take a week or 2 for it to actually get out. But yes, homefieldapparel.com, December 12th. Make sure you get your order in by then if you want to guarantee Christmas delivery. So yeah,
well,
thank you.
Sounds great. Yeah. Now Griff and I are going to send you our addresses.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can just ship those IU shirts. We'll start wearing them on the show. It's free advertising.
Yeah.
Well, Connor, thanks so much for coming on. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
All right, Griff. Now I want to bring in our new guest, Austin Render. Man, I don't know how you follow up that. You could be our favorite guest on the show today, Austin, if you offer to buy us some home field stuff.
I don't have any merchandise or apparel for you today, unfortunately. Nothing of that sort for me.
Yeah, we have to stay somewhat camera. We can't just rock T-shirts. Might be next week for the Purdue game. We'll think about it. But
if they send
Austin,
it to us, I will wear it.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Austin, I want to talk some Indiana women's basketball today. Man, I'll tell you, this team sure is fun. Top 15 in the country. 2 games in. What are the big takeaways from you early on in the season?
I mean, it's hard to take a lot out of those first 2 games just because they were against Eastern Kentucky and Samford. And it's not a knock on those 2 programs. It's just there's a talent differential that is more than normal for Indiana over some of these non-conference opponents, which is a good thing. I think the biggest thing that you can take away from the games is that Indiana's not satisfied with these wins. They're not satisfied winning 71-26 because they know they were sloppy at points in the game. They know that they have things that they need to shore up. And that's the sign. I wrote about this in the pregame, or not the pregame, before the season, when I said, look, this team was really good last year, and they see a ton of ways to get better. And that's the sign of a good team, is when you can look at something that was already good or even great and say, here's where we have to take the next step and not be satisfied where they are.
Before we focus on big picture, Austin, IU Wisconsin football is not the only top 20 matchup in IU athletics this weekend. Indiana women basketball team goes to play Kentucky tomorrow in Lexington. a primetime 5 o'clock game on ESPNU, national TV. What's the importance of that game for IU, and what are you expecting? What are the keys for the Hoosiers to come away with a big victory?
Well, this is a really good early season test, and it is almost like COVID-19. You see this in both sides with men's and women's. The difficulty of scheduling the non-conference has almost opened up more doors for these huge non-conference games. We just saw number 1 South Carolina get knocked off by NC State in the Jimmy V Classic. And that's just the stuff that we're getting treated to very early in the season. And Indiana, Kentucky's no different. These are two teams that needed to try and find some non-conference matchups. And hey, we're just down the road from each other. It worked out really well. I know both teams are really excited because you love when you have a measuring stick game this early in the season. And obviously, you can't play that game and take all these sweeping conclusions from it, but you can get a good gauge at where this team's at on the road against a top 15 team. First or second weekend of the season. I think this is going to be a really good challenge for Indiana. It's going to test their bigs because I think Mackenzie Holmes has taken that next step, but we've only seen it against Eastern Kentucky and Samford. So we're going to see if she has truly taken that next step to be the really solid center that she appears to be. And Alexa Gulbe as well, needing to be a little bit more consistent. So I have no doubt the guards are going to show up and perform. The question will be, can those bigs continue the production they've done in games 1 and 2?
Yeah, you should try that just down the road mentality with the men's program. We're going to get to that in a second. Yeah. Austin, I guess when you look at this big play, we've also seen a lot of issues early on with this Indiana women's basketball team in the sense they're struggling to shoot the three. That needs to be an area of some improvement, right?
Yeah, 30% from the three-point line this year. You take a look at the people who are struggling. Jalen Penn is 2 of 10. 3 of 10 1 of 3 for Chanel Wilson off the bench. 1 for 3 for Alexa Gulbe. 3 for 8 for Grace Berger. 0 for 6 for Chloe Moore McNeil off the bench. So there's a couple of people that have gotten off to slow starts that are skewing that a little bit. I think the promising thing for Indiana is Allie Papberg's shooting 43% from the three, Berger 38%. I think there are positives to be taken. Danielle Patterson is 3 for 5 this season. Obviously, very, very small sample sizes early in the season. And in games where you're up big and maybe you're not looking for the three-pointer as much as normal. But it's certainly something that was an issue a year ago and can't be ignored. This is a team that has way too talented of guards, way too talented of shooters to shoot poorly from the three-point line. I think Jalen Penn, still coming off of that surgery she had in the offseason on her plantar fasciitis, I think she's going to become that knockdown shooter that she was as a freshman, a little bit as a sophomore. So I don't have many doubts about her and the way she'll turn it around. And if Papberg and Berger can keep shooting around 38 to 40%, obviously those percentages will go up eventually. And obviously a freshman like Chloe Moore McNeil, you love to see that she's taking the threes, just has to start knocking them down, and that'll come. So it's concerning to see 30%, but I don't expect that to continue.
Well, now we're going to bring in Connor Hines here, and we're going to ask you both here. You look at both these teams. Connor, stop giggling. This is fun. We're going to talk. This is the first time we've ever done a four-way screen. Guys, when you look at both these teams, I'm going to have Connor make the argument for the men's team and Austin make the argument for the women's. Both these teams, which one is going to finish this year with a better record?
Well, I had no idea we were doing this, but I think the women's basketball team is.
This is an unfair argument for Hines.
Yeah, absolutely. This is ridiculous, to be honest. The Indiana women's basketball team is one of the best in the country right now, and what Terry Morin has done since even Austin and I have gotten to IU, just to see that transformation, that's been one of the most exciting things to see. So I can let Austin speak to that. But I mean, I think the one thing holding back the Indiana men's basketball team from even finishing above 500 in the Big Ten is this beast of a schedule. We've talked about this on the Indiana basketball podcast the past couple of weeks here. I mean, you got 2 matchups against Iowa, 2 matchups against Illinois, Wisconsin. They lost to Marquette a couple nights ago. That was last night. But, I mean, they're still a very quality team, too. The Big Ten is so deep on the men's side this year. I think there's trouble for Indiana men's basketball to even finish above 500 in the Big Ten. I know Austin has his thoughts on that, but Terry Morin's group they've got the upper hand here, I think.
Well, I'll hold off on the men's team and just take the women's side because, as Hines said, this is an absolutely ridiculous question because this is a team that's projected to win the Big Ten by the media and the coaches versus a men's team that was projected, I believe, 8th in the Big Ten. It's not a contest. Indiana will finish very well. I mean, they had 24 wins a year ago. I would imagine they top that this year. I think they're the cream of the crop in the Big Ten, and I think the championship runs through Bloomington. I don't expect them to have more than 5 to 7 losses this year. I really don't. And you'd be hard-pressed to find those 5 to 7 losses on their schedule anyway. So I see this team definitely crushing the men's team in terms of the wins, losses. But that doesn't mean they can't both have tournament success in their own right. So I don't even think it's apples to apples to compare the two. I think the Big Ten Conference in men's is so much deeper, so much tougher. Obviously, the women are going to finish with a better record, but that doesn't mean both teams can't go on a March run.
It's a transition question, guys. I'm sorry. I was just trying to make it a little smoother. Gosh.
You got us talking, Griffin, and that's all that a good host needs to do is get the guys talking, and you did that.
There we go. That's good to hear. Austin, thanks for much for joining us. We're going to focus on Hines for some IU basketball. We'll talk to you later. All right, Connor. Maui Invitational, all in the books. So what were your big takeaways from this one?
I mean, I know you want Archie Miller slander here, but I'm not going to give it to you. On the Indiana basketball podcast last week, me, Render, Jackson Yuri, we're all talking about, general expectations for this Indiana basketball team going down to Asheville. And I honestly thought at the time that 1-2 record in those 3 games would be acceptable. You don't have any cupcakes. You're jumping right into the non-conference portion. You got great competition immediately against teams like Providence. I thought at the time, before the Maui Invitational, that 1-2 was going to be acceptable. Not after that game against Texas, right? We all saw what Indiana did. Indiana was the aggressor against Providence in that first game. They were in transition faster. They were the defensive sort of aggressor. And the script literally flipped 24 hours later. Texas was doing exactly what Indiana did to Providence. And after that Texas game, obviously Indiana basketball, the fan base, very reactionary, but rightfully so. So I think the entire mood of the week changed once Indiana was able to get that win over Stanford. I was kind of encouraged by Archie Miller's sort of demeanor and commentary after this week because, Archie easily could have laid down and said that this was a massive failure of a week. But you got to remember, in past seasons for this Indiana basketball team, you've had the luxury of so many cupcake teams early in the season to sort of bolster that resume, bolster that non-conference schedule a little bit. Not this year. You jump right into the Maui Invitational, and especially with no preseason, no, real non-conference warm-up in a COVID year, you got to cut him a little slack. And I think that's exactly what Archie did. It was very encouraging to hear what he had to say about his team, despite that ugly loss to Texas. So I think Indiana's in an okay spot. They've got, they will have had about a week off by the time they play Florida State down in Tallahassee. So obviously not great, but not horrible either. Let's pump the brakes a little bit here.
We don't have a lot of time, Connor, but I'm gone. Trace Jackson Davis, felt like kind of the epitome of IU basketball's week. Had a really awful game, one of the worst games we've seen him play in a long time against Texas in their loss, and then came out against Stanford and was just absolutely spectacular. Is it going to be as simple as Trace Jackson Davis goes, this IU basketball team goes?
As an Indiana basketball fan, you would hope that's not the case, right? Because this Indiana team, I think it's the deepest team that Archie Miller has had since coming to Bloomington. And we've talked a lot about depth in past years for Archie Miller's Indiana teams. I think the difference in 2020 is that this is real, legitimate, well-rounded depth. This is the most well-rounded team you've got. So you would hope that you don't have to rely on TJD in the way that it looked like this IU team might last week. You know, we don't have to wait around to solve the identity of this Indiana team. They're going to be defense first. They're going to pound the paint like Trace Jackson Davis is capable of doing. Career day for him against Stanford, but you need more. You need to knock down shots that are clearly open. And, you know, one little aside that I noticed last week, if Rob Finney or even any perimeter shooter for Indiana can be at least halfway consistent from beyond the arc, it's going to be incredible to see what this Indiana team's capable of doing. Until then, though, you do need to rely on Trace Jackson Davis, and obviously he's one of the best big men in the Big Ten in the country right now. So, you know, you got to be thankful for what he provides, but this is a very deep team, you guys. I'm excited to see what they're capable of doing. A guy like Race Thompson stepping up inside the way he did. You got guys to point to wherever you look on this team.
Connor, before we let you go, one quick one for you. I like 15 seconds or less. What is the ceiling for this IU team from what you can tell early on?
I mean, honestly, looking at the schedule, it's a product of the Big Ten schedule. It's a product of the year, but I think the ceiling in terms of a record is, 500 in the Big Ten. I'd love for them to prove me wrong, because this is just a very daunting schedule period. And, based on what we saw last week, you got to have your reservations. You got to have your reservations about the balance and health and whatnot, but only time will tell. We jumped right into it this year. So really good to see what Indiana was capable of doing from the jump. And that'll only continue next week on the road down in Tallahassee. Excited for that one.
Connor Hines, here at the Hoosier Network.
Love you.
I appreciate that, Connor, and great talk on IU basketball. We're going to transition back to IU football, and what a great guest we have coming up. Jay-Sean Harris, one of the most dynamic players we've seen at IU, a punt returner, a wide receiver, graduated in 2018. Jay-Sean, thanks for coming on. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and thank you for having me. I was really looking forward to it after I got your text. So,
well, we're really looking forward to talking to you today, and just such an interesting story in your career. Came to IU in 2014, had a great freshman season, and then 3 straight years. Of course, you tore your ACL, and just coming back remarkably your senior year in 2018 to have another great season and returned a punt for a touchdown was special against Ball State. And just before we get into that, I'm curious what your journey's been since you've left IU in 2018. I know you played in the XFL this spring.
So I was grateful for the opportunity to play in the XFL, but then again, I tore my ACL for the 4th time. And after that, they allowed me to come home and do my rehab here. And back in 2017, I started a marketing agency called Nano Marketing Agency. And I jumped back into that with one of my former teammates and a few of my other friends. We got back into that. And so I was living an entrepreneurial lifestyle, like wholeheartedly, for a solid 3-4 months throughout this entire pandemic. And then I just most recently reached out to one of the old IU vets who also played in the league and asked him, for some guidance. And he, brought me into his business. So I've been working there and working on my own thing at the same time.
Wanted to go back and talk about the ACL injuries and those challenges that you went through. And obviously, we bring it up because of Michael Penix, who just suffered his 2nd ACL tear of his career last Saturday and his 3rd season-ending injury. How challenging is that, both mentally, just to be able to get back on the field, and also physically trusting your body when so many times you have the same injury?
It's very challenging, and support is like the biggest thing that you could have. And I haven't personally reached out to Mike yet, and I normally do with former athletes when they tear and I hear about it, but I know it's such a touchy subject. Like, I'm just trying to wait for the right time to do it. But man, what he's going through is on a different scale than what mine is. He's on a whole nother level. He's brought this university back to, greatness. He was the leader. He still is our leader right now for that football team. And, having him go through all this success and then, it being ended for this current season for something he could have controlled, it makes me sick to my stomach. And I will reach out to him probably today just to check on him, see how his head's doing. But yeah, it's tough. And And it takes someone with a strong mindset to persevere through it. But again, never was any of this on my own. I thank the man above, and also thank, my teammates, family, girlfriend, the entire support staff that I had to help me get through all of those times.
And of course, the medical staff also vital in helping recover and surgery and getting back on the field. Specifically, what IU? I mean, what's that process like, and what can we imagine that Mike is going through right now to try to get back on the field for next season?
Well, he is in an interesting situation. I know he does have some more eligibility, but at the time of his injury, by time it's time for the NFL talk, and I'm not trying to throw anything out there like there's something there, but he should be possibly ready to play at around that time. So I think that'll be interesting. That'll be something that he'll have to sit down with his family and make that decision. But the medical staff, like you said, played a major part, and I would love to give a shout out to the guy who was responsible for all of my rehabs while I was at IU, and his name is Colin Francis, who he's an assistant athletic trainer for the Baltimore Ravens right now. And I still keep in contact with him, once or twice a week. And so I built a great relationship with him. So I'm hoping that there's somebody in the training staff right now for Mike that will see him every day throughout his ups and downs, the struggles that he's about to face again, that he can, latch on to a strong relationship to help him persevere through this one.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about your senior season. I think it was just such an inspiring story for so many people with all the setbacks you'd had to finally come back in 2018. You finished the season healthy, over 300 receiving yards, over 100 punt yards, including that return for a touchdown. What was just that experience like, and what was kind of the feedback that you heard from the IU community and beyond about that comeback?
It was something that it's hard to put in, true words on the feeling, especially me coming at the crossroad on whether I was going to play again or not. And, experiencing some of the success that I was, wanting to get while I was injured was awesome. But again, the relationships that, I was able to continue to prolong for like an everyday basis, seeing people, that was amazing to me. Just being able to play, everything else, I was just happy to be out there running around, honestly. And everything else after that was just, it was what it was. So it was a bonus for me, and I'm happy that I decided to do it. And I've encouraged, a few athletes that I know personally who's going through similar situations as well to, if you love it, love the sport, go ahead and do it.
You were an upperclassman, one of the leaders when Ty Freifogel and Walt Fillier were some of the young guys in the IU locker room. Now Wap and Ty, the two star wide receivers on this team, they're going to play very prominent roles in about 30 minutes when they kick off from Madison. I think what's most interesting about them is they're very competing personalities. Ty's a very quiet, soft-spoken guy. Wap is just this fun-loving, loud guy. What's that dynamic in the locker room? And both of them have blossomed in these last two seasons. I mean, did you see that coming?
Yes, personally. And I reach out and talk to those guys all the time. And I could tell from when they came in freshman year under the recruitment of Coach Grant Hurd, I could tell that they were not there to play any games. Like, they wanted to be on top because they both came from some pretty solid and prestigious high schools. And so that right there just made me love them, from the jump. And I was happy that, those guys are experiencing this success, that they are right now, because I've seen how they work. I've seen the things that Wap has been through, him going through little knickknacks throughout the, last couple seasons. Ty as well, him just learning the plays and getting everything, feeling his confidence. And now you're seeing both of those guys explode. And all that is hard work and dedication that they've put in over the past couple of years.
And Jay Sean, you came in 2014, recruited by Kevin Wilson. We're here for 3 years. And then your last two seasons, Tom Allen, of course, the current head coach, was the head coach. We've heard a lot about this the change in the locker room, the LEO mentality, the stories about belief, and we've seen it on the field the last 2 years. What for you could you feel changed? And did you see, I guess, these last two seasons coming right after you graduated?
I wouldn't necessarily say it in a way of, Coach Allen is much better than Coach. I would never put it in that context. But from my experience while I was playing under when Wilson was there, I had a great experience as well. And a lot of my battles were, the injuries at the time. And so there was a lot of things that I was absent from. So I would, wouldn't even feel comfortable getting into any conversation,
Sure.
Pushing someone. But those conversations do happen. And some people do have agendas. But I respect both of them, with the utmost. And, I had a more involvement, I guess, for a longer period of time when Coach Allen, started running things. And that man right there, like, he's the guy, honestly. And I have so much respect. Like, if character was a person, if grit was a person, if everything that, boosts anyone up, based off of their actions and what they're about, he's that guy.
What is it about the LEO and about that belief? How is he able to instill that in his team so well that it can lead a program that is one of the least successful ever in college football to now being a top 15 team in the country?
It's actions. Everything he says, he puts his actions behind. And for me, it's a no-brainer to jump onto that and learn and want to learn and go through the wall for this guy, because he literally comes out to every practice, every game, the most prepared, the loudest, the most energetic, and you can't do anything but feed off of that. And so them going and having the success that they're going through right now, he's not foreign to that. And he's letting those guys know that, like, this stuff can go the other way. You have to take, success that they're having. But him as a leader for that program, for that university, he is the guy, in my opinion, right now. And he's doing a great job of what he's doing, not only on the field, but off the field.
You graduated in that 2017 season. Team went 5-7. The last 2 years, I mean, such resounding success. Of course, this year has been an especially historic year. What's it just been like as a former player who played with many of these players, played under Coach Allen, just to watch these last couple of years and especially this season? Oh, Jay Sean, I think your audio cut out. We can't hear you right now. I still can't hear you. All right, maybe if you want to try to come out and come back in, we could let you back in just a couple minutes, maybe. I still can't hear you. All right. Well, hopefully Jay Sean Harris is going to come back in just a moment. What a great interview. I'll bring in Griffin Gonzalez here. And I mean, just an inspiring story. And I know, you grew up watching him, explosive, and just, I think someone for Michael Penix to look up to. 3 ACL tears and comes back really special.
Yeah, and Jay Sean has been so fun to watch for so long. His story, but more importantly, every time he came out on that field, you could tell the kid was fighting. And I mean, his determination, his grit, he gave that credit to Tom Allen, but I think he's a pretty good example of it himself.
All right, it looks like we got Jay Sean. If we want to bring him back in here and hopefully we get the audio working. All right, Jay Sean, I think, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Awesome. Wonderful. So I was asking you about just watching these last 2 seasons as a former player. What's that experience been like?
It's been very exciting, and I won't hold you long. I know you all have to go into the next topic, but it's been very exciting. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for what those guys are being able to put up and show each and every game.
And last question for you. We've been asking all our guests for a prediction. One of the biggest IU football games this season, top 20 matchup, national TV. Obviously, Michael Penix out, Jack Tuttle now in. Who do you think wins the game? What's the score? And what's maybe a key, too, as a former player who's watched this team?
Oh, I have us against anyone. And I say that because I, have been blessed with the opportunity to see, what those guys went through on an everyday basis while Coach Allen was grooming, the team into what it is today. And I know it's going to be a tough matchup. I won't say that it's going to be a blowout or anything. I think it'll be a very tough matchup, and it'll come down to who can protect the ball the most, get the most turnovers, who can protect it, and who can, obviously put the most points up. But I think it's going to be a pretty good fight, and we'll see what we're made about when adversity.
Absolutely. Jay Sean Harris, really appreciate you coming on. Fascinating stuff, and best of luck in your endeavors going forward. I know everyone at IU and in Bloomington is rooting for you.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right, that was Jay Sean Harris. Fascinating stuff, Griffin, as you said. And just, I think you mentioned that grit, and that's one of the words that we hear Tom Allen use time and time again about this Indiana football team. And yeah, Jay Sean hasn't been on these last two teams, but I think it's players like him as an upperclassman that young people like Ty Freifogel, like Watt Fillier, learn from and help now lead this program to just such great success.
Yeah, and Jay Sean's prime example of that. Somebody who came through the program, not highly recruited, and developed. And I think that's kind of the area IU is going to go here for the future of Tom Allen. He knows he's not going to get the guys that Alabama is bringing in on any given Tuesday. But if he continues to develop great in-state talent, great athletes, they can become that, like you've seen with Wap. I mean, the best linebacker in the Big Ten right now is Micah McFadden, who came out of high school being like near the 3,000th best recruit. It's been amazing to see how they develop. And I think a big reason, why we talk about that defense, it's skill. And somebody asked Tom Allen, is this an opportunity? Is this defense actually that good? Let's go ahead and take a look.
Oh, it's not by chance. I promise you that. Just watch the film. These takeaways are created. So, yeah. I mean, that's what you're asking. So, we work extremely hard to create takeaways and talk to the quarterbacks after they play us. They'll let you know.
Well,
that just fire you up.
It really does. This defense leads the country. You got to turn off your echo, Griffin. This defense leads the country. I can't hear myself talk. It's crazy. This defense leads the country in interceptions at 16 picks. Some people, though, they say it's opportunistic. Tom Allen wants to stand up for his team. He says, watch the film. So we actually have some film. So let's pull it up and watch it. And first, we got Jalen Williams' interception last week. Talua Tagovailoa. See, he has a lot of time here in the pocket, but Jalen Williams just waiting. He's in the passing lane, watching the quarterback's eyes, picks that ball off. We got another angle here. Kurt Spittler, our great photographer. And you kind of get a better look of Williams just waiting in the lane there, picks the route. And yeah, quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. Talua Tagovailoa is locked in on his quarterback. He never sees Jalen Williams. But as you see Williams fumble there, and one thing IU needs to clean up, it's that ability to make a great catch, get in the passing lane. That's not opportunistic, but that's worked on in practice. It shows the incredible athleticism of this IU secondary and players like Jalen Williams, who's taken a major, major step forward with athleticism and just his ability to catch the ball there, too, as you saw in that angle. That's a very tough catch for a wide receiver to make, and he's able to make a really nice catch there. And we got a second clip, so let's pull that up as well. And opposite Jalen Williams, Tywone Mullen, one of the best cornerbacks in the Big Ten, maybe the country, really making a nice play here. This was Rocky Lombardi in the Michigan State game a couple weeks ago. And yeah, the pass is underthrown, but you're going to see here on this next clip, Tywone Mullen, number 3 there, he circled. Our ESPN broadcast is going to help us out here. He's covering the other wide receiver, but he's watching the ball. He turns, comes back, and then what a catch to go down on one knee and make that play. You're going to get another view here. Ross Abdallah, one of our other HN cameramen, making a nice shot there. And you can see Mullen, the athleticism, turning around, making the catch, but it's that recognition too. Most guys, they're not going to turn around right away and be able to get there in time because they're going to stay on his man. But he's able to get there in time. And Rocky Lombardi, I mean, he's kind of just throwing up a jump ball. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks try to do that because you have one guy, Jalen Williams, or one guy, Tywone Mullen, or one guy, Reese Taylor, who's locking down that wide receiver. And then you're throwing up a jump ball. Well, the other safety or the other cornerback comes in and he's able to pick it off because he's reading the quarterback or he's looking for that underthrown ball like you see there. So we watched the film. I agree with Tom Allen. I don't think it's opportunistic. I think it's skill. It's frustrating the quarterbacks. And I think they're going to frustrate Graham Mertz today. If they don't pick off at least 2 passes in today's game, I'd honestly be surprised because you're playing a young quarterback and he just threw 5 picks against Northwestern 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge game for them. I think the defense, if Indiana can win this game, it's the defense's game to win,
Absolutely.
not the offense today. It's going to be huge. Well, we're going to finish the show now with one final guest. He's a reoccurring guest. Connor Hines coming back on here for our final IU football discussion. Connor, we look at this game. We see at these teams, and it just feels like this is going to be the game that's going to send both teams in the direction that's going to follow them the rest of the year.
Yeah, it definitely does. Something feels different just about this point in the season, how weird this year has been and everything. It does feel like a bit of a turning point. And up to now, I feel like everything for Indiana football has been more or less predictable. I think it's kind of ran its course the way we've expected it to, based on what we saw, with obviously after the opening win against Penn State and whatnot. Ever since then, it's sort of been what we expected, after seeing what this Indiana team is capable of doing in 2020. But I think this week is different for a couple different reasons. Obviously, you got Jack Tuttle as QB1 now. And also, to your guys' point, what you were just talking about there in the film analysis, I mean, this is a team that is going to rely that much heavier on its defense now, even more so than it has up to now. So I'm really eager to see what both sides of the ball are capable of doing against a very talented Wisconsin team. Obviously you got to start on the defense, but don't sell Jack Tuttle short either. I mean, he's been waiting for this opportunity really ever since he was recruited by Utah.
I do want to ask you actually one quick question on Jack Tuttle, Connor, because I know you're back in San Diego. You grew up in San Diego County, where Jack Tuttle's from. I believe you actually watched him in high school in San Marcos. What was your impression, I guess, back then, and how do you feel like he's improved and changed as a quarterback?
Yeah, it's funny. San Diego is not exactly a hotbed for high school football like the Los Angeles area is, but Jack Tuttle kind of emerged after his first couple years at Mission Hills High School in San Marcos, which was actually the rival high school of San Marcos High School, which is where I had two different cousins play football there. So they actually played. They were both defenders. They played up against Jack Tuttle a couple different times, and he played my high school, La Costa Canyon, a couple different times. Just absolutely rocked everybody in the San Diego section. Really, I don't think after those those first couple of years at Mission Hills, I don't think there was ever a doubt that he was one of the best quarterbacks in San Diego. Kareem Coles, that's another name, really talented quarterback at the time in San Diego. But Jack Tuttle, he won the Silver Pigskin a couple times, which is the prestigious, award that goes to the best football player in the San Diego section. There was never really a doubt that he was going to go to a very talented Division I program. And, he got recruited by Utah, didn't get his opportunity there. Obviously, his dad was a walk-on at Indiana back in the day. So everything just kind of comes full circle. And now today, Jack Tuttle's playing for the Indiana Hoosiers. So just a cool story all around. It was just always really praised for his poise in the pocket from a really young age as the starting quarterback at Mission Hills too. So yeah, for someone like me, I'm maybe a little more excited to see him play today, but I mean, it's going to be fun. Like we've heard all week in the media and whatnot, he's been waiting for this.
You San Diego kids, man. you Cali kids over here, man. Too many of you at IU. Guys, we're going to wrap up the show right now with final thoughts and predictions. Griff, let's go ahead and start with you.
I'm making my prediction right now.
Yeah, final thoughts and predictions.
All right. Well, I'll start with final thoughts and I guess a couple keys to this game. And I think we've been over a fair amount of them. I think the turnovers are most important, so I won't dwell on that. I think both sides, though, it's important not just to consider that Indiana's defense needs to force turnovers, but also on the other side of the ball. Is this Wisconsin defense forcing Jack Tuttle into mistakes? Obviously he's very talented, as Connor says, but it wouldn't be surprised to see him make some mistakes. Michael Penix is pretty much a mistake-free quarterback. I don't know how much this Wisconsin offense scores, but you can't give them free chances. So I think Indiana needs to win that turnover battle by at least 2. They need to get points off turnovers. But the other key to the game, that's something not a lot of people are talking about, is this Wisconsin ground game. They got some young backs, some talented backs. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is gone. There's no Melvin Gordon. But they've got some backs that they ran very well against Michigan. They ran very well against Illinois. I know those defenses aren't good, but this IU defensive line has not been great against the run this season. And we saw the last good back they faced in Master Teague, ran all over them and won that game. If IU's defense can be as dominant as many expect them to do, and I think as they need to be to win, I think they need to slow down this ground game and they need to make it a one-dimensional offense and force Graham Mertz into those mistakes where he commits turnovers. So am I giving my final score right now? We doing this? or should I wait until one more round?
Go for it. Let's hear it.
I'll go for it. I've been so conflicted. I don't almost want to make one. I feel like I've gone back and forth. I picked Wisconsin on our podcast earlier this week. I woke up on Friday and was thinking about it and just thinking about this IU defense. And I guess one of our guests, Connor, mentioned it from home field earlier, and I won't tread on it too long, but the story that he told on Coach K, the basketball coach at Duke's podcast yesterday in 2017 about belief and having all of his players write on a note card who they were going to lose to, who they thought they were going to lose to, or how many games they were going to lose, then who they were going to lose to. And then they had to pass all the cards up, and Tom Allen started reading the schools that the players in the locker room thought they were going to lose to and said, well, you think you're going to lose to Michigan State? If you really believe that, don't get on the bus. Don't get out of bed. Don't go to the game. And that's how he's instilled belief in this team. And people still don't believe in this team, and it's remarkable. 4 out of 5 on College Game Day said, it was going to be Wisconsin. It's not going to be close. Last week against Maryland, 2 people on College Game Day picked Maryland, which didn't really make any sense to me. They're 14-point underdogs, yet they're higher in the AP poll. They have 3 2-loss teams that, if you watch the eye test, which the College Football Playoff Committee says is more important, look much worse than Indiana. Indiana's only loss is a 7-point loss to a Ohio State team that, without half of its starters right now, is just dismantling Michigan State. So it's that belief in the culture he's built in this program. I originally went Wisconsin. I thought about it more. I heard that story. This team just finds a way. And I think Ohio State was just a little bit too talented and they fell behind early. I think finally this team comes out early and plays good football. I think Jack Tuttle will be a good enough game manager not to cause mistakes. And I think this IU defense is going to be elite. I have Indiana winning today 20-17. It's going to be close. It's going to be really exciting.
Connor?
I love the bold predictions. I mean, that's why we're here, right? To sort of reiterate a couple things that Griffin just said. Obviously, it goes without saying that Indiana needs to be the aggressor, needs to win the turnover battle on defense. This game is going to be won defensively. It feels like almost every game for the past couple seasons, Kane Womack's defense has just found a way to do something at the right time, and that something has really been the reason why Indiana's able to win the game or able to carry the momentum in their favor, what have you. So it obviously begins defensively. My pause for concern on Indiana being able to stay competitive here would be not so much what Jack Tuttle is or is not capable of doing, but the banged up offensive line around him and the sort of instances that we've seen, Michael Penix's pocket really just collapse instantly. I know that that's sort of a, minute, aside here, but still, when you got a new quarterback in there for the first time, you want him to feel as comfortable as possible. And as Griffin Epstein said there, I mean, you're going to expect him to not be perfect today. On the road, hostile environment, obviously no fans, but cold weather, what have you. I don't know. I don't know if Indiana can pull it out today, just being realistic about it. Again, I'd love for them to prove me wrong. I'm going to go 31-27 Wisconsin. I think it's going to be a very competitive game from start to finish. Really eager to see what Wisconsin's defense is capable of doing, but it starts defensively. It feels like every single week we see Kane Womack's swarm defense do something different, whether it be Jalen Williams, Micah McFadden. There are so many names you can point to on this Indiana defense, and that's been the most exciting part of this Indiana football season for me. Regardless, I'm excited to watch this one. It's going to be a competitive game either way.
Listen, here's the deal. This team is unique. It's different. It's not the usual IU football team that we're used to. You saw that last week against Maryland. Was Maryland kind of scrappy? Yeah, and is that the game that IU usually loses at home? Yes, but they did. They came out, they made adjustments, and they won. It was just something that usually opponents of IU does to IU, and I think that's going to be the difference maker. I think that's going to be what makes this IU football team different. Do I think IU is going to beat Wisconsin today? No, I don't. I think Wisconsin's defensively is too tough. I think IU can hang with their offense, but defensively, I don't think the offense is going to be able to really get it going. I think you need to be able to rely on that run, and I don't exactly trust Jack Tuttle because I really haven't seen Jack Tuttle. So I think when I look at this ball game, it all depends on how IU defense plays. If IU's able to get stops, force turnovers, and set up the offense in a good enough position where they can get at least a field goal, let alone a touchdown, that'd be nice. But if they could do that, I think IU has a good chance. I'm going Wisconsin 17-14, and I think they have to do it in the final 2 minutes of that one. I just think that I think IU's defense is that good, but I also think Wisconsin's defense is that good. And I think Wisconsin has something to play for, considering the fact now that Northwestern's dropped one, they can still make some noise. So it should be a fun one. No doubt
It's
about
going to be
that.
close.
It's going to be close. That's for sure. We'll see. Anyway, that's going to wrap up the rundown for this week for Connor Hines, Griffin Epstein, all of our guests today. It's been an absolute blast. I've been Griffin Gonzalez. Next week, it's the big one, the bucket game. Go enjoy some IU football. We'll see you next Saturday.